Welcome to another episode of Threads of Enlightenment. As usual, I really truly like to take the time to stop here for a minute and pay homage to my guests and thank them for their time, for coming and sharing that precious commodity with us, because I know the value of it. And many people misuse it. But once you recognize the purpose of time, you utilize it correctly in your life. And so I want to thank you for coming, Hasana, and giving us your time. The other is your journey, which houses a lot of pain, sacrifices, wisdom, all of those things, darkness, light, but it was you at one point. And so I am honored to have you coming and sharing your journey with us so that we can gain some insight from this conversation, that we may become better human spirits while we occupy this beautiful planet called Earth. Thank you so much for coming to Threads of Enlightenment.
Welcome. It's my pleasure to be here. I'm honored to be a guest. Thank you.
I am honored to have you. Tell us a little about those things that you have given birth through your journey, as you walked through your journey and you came out. What were some of those things that you have given birth to by which people can get a chance to delve in and taste this new you?
Well, one thing that I've definitely given birth to is just a new and improved mindset, changing my beliefs about myself, changing my beliefs about my world, changing my beliefs about what's possible for me.
Excellent. And I know that you have a book as well that you had given birth to that. Tell them a little about it.
Yes, I have an ebook, and that ebook is how to begin to heal from divorce, ways to begin to heal from divorce. I also have a program that I've built. It's an 8-week program, helping women to transcend from divorce to living their dream life. It's an 8-week program that I've created, and it's step-by-step coaching with me for 8 weeks, in which we cover learning how to, number one, heal from emotional trauma caused by divorce, learning how to change into a positive mindset, learning how to set boundaries for yourself, and just transcend from a divorced person healing from emotional trauma to living your dream life.
Excellent. I cannot wait to get into this topic because as we learn about different insights, I believe it adds to our knowledge and makes us wiser. I am now sporting a beard for the first time in my life, and people say I look wiser, but I don't know anything about that. I just, in my mind, I think I look a little older, but let's see. Talk to us about your childhood. This is where the space, I believe, where you and I get our first introduction to the programming that is set out in society. I believe there's a couple of entities out there that are so desperate for our attention to program us. Our families, one; religion is another; education system is another. We have the world as the global community is another. Culture. All of these entities are trying to get our attention to program us. If you don't believe me, look at the budget of some of these corporations when it comes to their marketing, and they understand the science of the mind to program you and I. Talk to me about your family unit. How was that with your parents and your sibling and yourself?
Okay, well, one thing to know about me is I'm one of a triplet. When my
Wow.
mother had me, she had 3 girls. Unfortunately, my sisters, they passed away when they were babies.
Wow.
So I was the only survivor. My mother then went on to have 2 other children, girls, which are my sisters. My household, I come from an Islamic household. I was raised as a Muslim. My mother and my father divorced when I was 2 years old. And when I was 10, my mother remarried. So at that point, it was me and my 2 sisters and my stepfather. I'm originally from Newark, New Jersey. That's where I grew up. So in that household, it was a bit strict, being raised as a Muslim child. It was a little different. I wasn't really able to do the same things that the other children were really able to do. There was, unfortunately, some abuse in the household, especially around the time that my mother remarried my stepfather. So at that point, around the age of 14, I actually moved out of my family home and moved to live with my father, who I really didn't know.
Hmm.
I'd only met him at 10 years old, and I hadn't really spent any time around him. When I was 14, I went like one summer to live with him, to just stay with him for a summer and came back. So
Hmm.
I didn't really know him. So I went to go live with him at 15. That was interesting. He had some problems and he ended up not staying around. So I ended up being raised by his wife, who later became his ex-wife at the time. And I was a bit free to be a teenager. I could pretty much do whatever I wanted to do. Um, she would take me to clubs and just a bit much for a 15-year-old.
Yeah, that's a lot for a 15-year-old, a lot of things swirling around you, if you
Mhm.
will, some intense emotional things as well. How did you manage yourself within that mentally? How did you, I know you were being escorted or to different parties in the clubs, but how did you feel having all of these things going around you? And how did you begin to notice mentally how you were behaving and acting on this time at this time in your life?
I think that at one point, um, I think in the beginning I might have enjoyed the interaction of being able to go to those places, but eventually it kind of reached a point where I felt like something about this just does not feel right.
Hmm.
It just didn't feel right to, okay, I go out and then I stay out all night, and
Hmm.
by the time I come home, it's daylight.
Hmm.
I still had a lot of my, even though I had this newfound freedom, I still had a lot of my Islamic beliefs about what was right and what was wrong, and it just didn't feel right to me.
Yeah.
So eventually, it really reached a point where I just told my stepmom, I don't really want to go to these places with you.
Hmm.
Um, so I just stopped going. I
Wow.
kind of just stopped going. Um, I feel like I looked at her and I just saw that she had also had a traumatic childhood, and then a traumatic experience being married to my father because he
Yeah.
had his issues.
Hmm.
Um, at that time, she was also going through a lot of things. She was going through a divorce. So I just kind of looked at her and felt like she has some issues here, but this is just not working for me. This is not who I really want to be. You
And
know,
once you've made that decision, how did you govern your life after you made that decision and you made that declaration to her and saying that I don't want to go to the clubs? What did you do with your time and yourself while after you made this decision?
after I made that decision that I didn't really want to do that anymore, I got a job. I started
Mm-hmm.
working, and she was still from time to time like try to pull me into it, but I just wasn't interested. I started surrounding myself with different people. I got another role model, honestly. There was a social worker at my school who really took a liking to me,
Mm-hmm.
a woman. And I started to use her as more so my example. If I needed advice about anything, I would speak to her. She started getting me involved in a lot of good programs where I was, which was Maryland. So she got me involved in a lot of programs to help me to, begin to change my mindset a bit. So that's kind of how I dealt with it. And then by the time I was 18, I just moved out. I just
Mm-hmm.
moved because I just knew that what I saw in front of me was not how I wanted to be. It was just
Wow.
not the person, not the example that I wanted to have. So I kind of just, and then also it wasn't too hard because there were abusive tendencies about my stepmother.
Mm-hmm.
So it didn't really make it hard for me to kind of just start to distance myself. And then eventually we kind of had a disagreement, and I just moved out and just never really went back.
Wow. So here's this young woman. You have your job, you're moving out, you're coming into your own, as they say. Once you got there, how did you begin to govern yourself? Once you're in your space, you can look around, it's you. How did you govern yourself while you were there?
Well, one thing at the time I was in college,
Mm-hmm.
so pretty much my whole focus was I'm gonna complete school. So I started college there in Maryland where I was at. Then not long after that, I decided that I wanted to move back to my hometown because this at this point I'm living in Baltimore, Maryland. So I decided, you
Hmm.
know what, I want to move back to my hometown. I've been away from my family for a long time. I was speaking more with my family there, and they kind of felt like, Hasna, it's been a long time since you've been here. It's time for you to come back. So at that point, I moved back to New Jersey, and I kind of just focused myself. I was completing a degree in business management, so I kind of just put my focus into that, and just focusing on that and working a job. And, at that point, I started to get more into like a spiritual, um, I don't know if I would say awakening, but I started to think more spiritually just about who I wanted to be, how I wanted things to be, and I started to feel like I wanted to be more connected, with my
Yeah.
creator. So I started studying more and learning more because though I was raised as a Muslim, I had a lot of questions. There was a lot of things that I didn't understand about my religion. And up until that point, from I would say the ages of like 14 to 21, I wasn't even really practicing my religion at all. I was kind of like in a searching phase,
Hmm.
just trying to search. So I had been going to different churches and just, just trying to find out who was my creator and just trying to just get my life together, and get myself on the right track.
That's a good quality to have, I think, at a young age, to have that inquisitiveness about the spiritual aspect of our existence. A lot of people don't wait until they'll wait until they're in some type of deep trouble when all hell is breaking loose
Mhm.
in their lives, and then they start crying, "Oh God, save me, and I'll do this." So we start making making deals with them to
We've all
try
been
and
guilty of that one though,
I
Ken.
know, all of us. So it is a good trait to have for a young woman at such an age to start being inquisitive as to her deeper connection to this planet. As you were searching and reading and learning about some of these different belief systems, how were you looking at yourself? How did you begin to look at yourself as a young woman seeking? What was your relationship to yourself?
I feel that my relationship to myself, I wasn't happy, honestly, with myself and some of the choices that I was making. I feel like the past experience of my childhood,
Hmm.
especially at that point, it was really I feel it was really affecting me. My self love wasn't where I wanted it to be. My connection with my creator was not where I wanted it to be. I felt like even though I had tried to disconnect myself from the influences that were in my life, I did feel like it was still having an impact on me.
Hmm.
And I feel
Yeah.
like that was really the springboard for me searching so much to connect with my creator because I just felt like, okay, I've had all of these not positive influences, in my life. And, I did, at some points, I do feel like I felt a bit abandoned because at the point where at 14, when my
Yeah.
mother sent me to live with my father, she kind of had given up her parental rights. And
Hmm.
at that point, she could have made a choice. When my father didn't stay, she could have allowed me to come back home, but she just allowed me to stay.
Yeah.
She allowed me
How?
to stay. So, I feel like that trauma, though I was trying to be a better person, though I was trying to develop into, a good, woman, I feel like those things were still impacting me, and therefore I didn't have the greatest relationship with myself in reference to my self-esteem, in reference to my self-love, in reference to feeling that I was good enough, in reference to
Mhm.
my relationship with the creator, which was probably what springboarded my searching in the first place.
Yeah, I've interviewed so many people, I think, and I've noticed this thread that I see amongst all of us, and I think it is just a part of the human experience, that when we were young, there are several incidents or incident that takes place, and because of the how we are small human spirits, and how we interpret that incident will form our belief. We will begin to make decisions internal. I tell people we make these internal decisions. It may not be loud, but we would look at that situation and said, I'm never going to let this happen to me again. Or I hate this feeling. I just don't like this. And all of these agreements that we make. And you had mentioned the term that I feel that is one of, it's a powerful emotional feeling that I want to stop here for a minute, Hasana, to talk about, because I know a lot of people are here. It's this feeling of abandonment. Talk to us a little about that, because it is a powerful emotional feeling that someone brings into their space, and then they have to learn how to manage it, because they relationships began to crumble, self doubt and reflection, all of those different things, those things that you started to whisper to yourself. What were some of those beliefs based upon the fact that you felt abandoned? What were some of those whispering that you were saying to yourself as a young woman?
Oh, that's such a good question because now we're about to cover those beliefs, which is so important. Whoa, some of the beliefs that I had was just I didn't feel good enough.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't feel worthy. I definitely didn't feel worthy. I didn't feel loved. I felt like I was a bad person. I didn't feel
Yeah,
like I was a good person because my leaving of my mother's household was kind of based off of I felt like at the time that it was me that I was the problem because
yeah,
she had remarried and this person had abused me, but because I said something about it and I wasn't tolerating it, it was like I'm the bad one. I'm the bad
yeah.
person. So at my core, my beliefs were just I'm not good enough. I'm not worthy. I'm not loved. I'm not a good person. That those
Mm,
were the beliefs that were going through my mind because I kind of felt like, well, if I was a good person, why would she allow me to leave? And then when she had the opportunity to allow me to come home, she didn't force me to come home. She didn't make me.
yeah,
She didn't say,
yeah.
no, you can't come home. But I said, well, I'll come home, but I have to know that things will be different.
Mm-hmm.
She never attested to, yes, things will be different. So
Mm-hmm.
I felt like, well, I'm not going to come home. Why am I going to come back to the same thing?
Yeah, yeah. Makes sense. And that's a really interesting story that you tell, because it is so many women that are making these choices and choosing the men over their children, and I find that a very fascinating piece of a mindset that a woman would do that, carrying this individual within her and the connection that comes from a relationship like that, to be able to, as you said, and it is to me, a deep form of abandonment that as we talk, it affects that individual deeply, so that they can't, they start making decisions that are just contrary to their growth and stuff like that, as we were discussing. So here you are, but I'm so glad that you're pursuing this spiritual aspect, because I'm sure that is saving you from a lot of madness, even though you're going through some of the madness, if you know what I mean. It could have been a lot worse had you totally surrender that aspect of your life and not bring this part in. While you were seeking and learning and trying to get a handle about this, how did you come into the space of getting married and stuff like that? The individual that you married, and I tell people we usually go towards those type people because we're familiar with the energy. And because we're familiar with the energy, there's a form of comfort there, even though it's a corrupt comfort, but we're so familiar with it that it's okay. We think we can manage it. And so we walk into that situation like that. And then when it gets to a point where we look and say, what the heck did I just do?
Oh my
That's when we
gosh.
began to wake up. So talk to me as to how you navigated to that aspect, because it is a part of what we do. How did you find yourself navigating to that type of energy, yet knowing? How did you feel about it? Because we do get glimpse of it, but we then surrender to the madness. Talk to me about that part of your time while you were moving through your growth.
That is such a deep question. Oh, well, during that time when I was, just trying to explore more spiritually and, understand my creator, I happened to meet, and honestly, I was so not in tune with my own instinct and my
Mm-hmm.
own trust of myself that when I met my first initial meeting of the person, I felt like I don't like it. I really, really, I can remember that going through my head. I don't like you. And I even told the person during our interactions, I would say, I don't like you. I would say, I don't like you. But
Sana, let
still,
me interrupt you here for a second. I'm laughing because I hear this so many times. It happened to me, and I tell people the spiritual part of us is making that declaration, but the natural part of us started coming into play, and we started looking at the person and go, "Oh, they're handsome, they're beautiful, they like the things." They like this one thing. They like that. We get along. It seems we talk. We allow the natural part of us to talk that spiritual part of us into accepting this crazy person that just walked into our
that is
life.
exactly what happened.
Yeah, I know. I did it to myself.
That is
Yeah,
exactly what happened, Ken. My mind was telling me, the spiritual side was telling me, no, this is
yeah,
a no. This
yeah.
is a no. But I allowed myself to be captivated by his false charm.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I kind of went with it. The next thing I knew, I found myself, oh, like you said, just like everything you said, Ken. Oh, he's handsome. Oh,
Yeah.
he's charming. Oh, he dresses nice. Oh, he says, we're gonna have this and have that, and he's going to do this and that. And I found myself captivated.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like at that time, what really made me make that move with him was because he was different from the other men that I had met at that time. He
Yeah.
appealed to me on the spiritual aspect. We started
Yeah.
studying religion together. We started studying Islam together. So I really feel like that was the more of the determining factor for me, because at that time I was searching religiously and spiritually, and he claimed that he was also,
Hmm.
and so we kind of connected in that way. And he actually really did. He really did. He was a Christian and he converted
Yeah.
to Islam. So he's still a Muslim to this day. So he really did. I believe he was sincere in that. But that, I feel like that was the part that kind of made him be a yes, even though he should have been a no.
Mm-hmm. It happens so many times. And I think, and I tell people, and I learned as a result of going through mine. And trust me, I went through it more than once for me for the lesson to kind of like hit my hard skull, as they say. It is that inner voice is the only sense that man has not learned how to manipulate. He can manipulate the natural sense, but the spiritual sense is that sense within yourself and deep within us that shouting out a no. He doesn't know how to manipulate that not even unless, until we surrender listening to it. Then the natural senses take over and we find ourselves walking in a relationship for 5, 10 years, 20 years. But the beautiful thing about God is that He will use even all of that stuff that you went through for that amount of time to make you even more beautiful. So talk to us as you are in this relationship now, and how was your growth and that lifestyle when you find yourself with this young man married? And how was your life and how was you more importantly, in this situation? What was happening inside the little conversation you would have in yourself when he wasn't, when the lights were off, when you were by yourself? What were those type of conversation going on while you were in this marriage, if you will?
In the beginning of the marriage, honestly, I really didn't understand what was going on. It
Hmm.
started off with him being, really, really nice. And then not long after the beginning of the marriage, I would find myself feeling like I want to run.
Mm.
Like I want to run, like I want to get away, I want
Yeah,
to escape, like just because he had controlling tendencies,
yeah,
abuse tendencies, emotional abuse, financial abuse, and for so many years, I just kept thinking I was the problem. Going back to that whole dynamic of those early years when I
yeah,
was living in, my mother's household. So it was really like the kind of like the same dynamic, which
yeah.
was, oh, here I am in this controlling environment, and it must be me. It must be something that I'm not doing or something that I need to do.
Mm.
And it took
What?
it took a long time for me to start to really see that I was not the problem. Like really,
Yeah.
Ken, probably about 18 years for me to really
Wow.
see that I was not the problem. That it was. I mean, I kind of say I wasn't the problem, but then knowing what I know now, I wouldn't say I was the problem, but I wasn't the problem. My mindset was the
Yeah.
problem. My paradigm was the problem, but that person had a problem.
Yeah. Yeah.
Does
So
that make
here
sense
you,
to you?
yeah, it makes absolutely perfect sense. I know exactly what you're talking about. So here you are in this mix, and as it begins to deteriorate, because how long did you stay in that relationship, and how did it progress to the end of it? That you said that once it was severed, how long did that take?
The whole process, I was in the marriage for 21 years
Hmm.
with six children.
Wow.
Yeah, six children. Mashallah. I would say throughout the years, I would say like every few years, I would go through certain awakenings, but I felt very stuck, okay?
Hmm.
Because one thing to know is that after 8 years of our marriage, we moved to a foreign country. We moved
Hmm.
to an Islamic foreign country. And at that point, when we first moved there, we had three children. And close to the end of the marriage, so I'm in this
Wow.
foreign country, okay? None of my family is there with me. It's just me and my family. I'm not allowed to work in this country, so I don't have any means to make money if I do this, decide to leave.
Yeah.
And I just, for so long, I just felt stuck. I felt really, really stuck. So I kept trying things to just try to change or try to cope and just try to make things be better because I felt like, what am I going to do? I don't have anywhere to go. Yes, I have family in the States, but they were not really in any position to be able to assist me.
Yeah.
So I stayed for 21 years. But my wake up call, I would say, happened. I started to wake up, I would say, after 15 years. That was
Yeah.
like the first wake up call because by that point I had just dealt with so much. And, I just felt like I really can't and won't deal with anymore. So I would say
Yeah.
by year 15, I started to wake up. But definitely by year 18, I was awake and I was planning my exit plan.
I
And we
know
were,
that that is a powerful thing because I remember I did an interview. Sorry to interrupt. I did an interview with a woman. Um, she planned her exit plan for like 10 years, and so it's
wow.
really fascinating to hear someone you said the exact same words as she did. So how being in a different country, different culture, how did you begin to put that together? Because you are not working and you have no income and you're going to need some of that to in your planning. How did you put this together, Hasana? How did you do this?
I started to think about what can I do? How can I earn money?
Mm,
And I needed to be able to earn that money in a way where the government would not know.
yeah, yeah,
Because in that country, if you were caught earning any money, they would deport you. You would have fines. It could really be a big problem, a big
yeah.
problem. So I kind of started to just first, of course, I prayed on it, and then I actually ended up finding a way to start a business from being in the country that I was in, and while still being there in America.
Mm,
So I talked to my family. I
Mm-hmm.
talked to my family, and they were aware that, they knew I'm working on an exit plan. So
Yeah.
I talked to them, and I basically bootstrapped. I bootstrapped, got the funds I needed, and using the internet, I started a business. I started my company that
Mm-hmm.
is established in the United States, and then I started to look to. I started an online business online.
Mm-hmm.
And again, this is around like year 18. So year 18 is when I kind of started to wake up.
Yeah.
And not long after that, my ex started to see, he started to see changes within me because I moved into my own room. We was, still
Mm-hmm.
married, but I moved into my own room. Because the way that divorce works from an Islamic perspective is the husband can just say, I divorce you,
Yeah.
okay, and you're divorced. But he has within that time he can say it 3 times. If he says it 3 times, then that's it, it's over. He can't take you back. But if it's the first
Wow.
time or the second time, he can take you back.
Wow.
So my ex-spouse had already called the divorce, honestly, Kim, probably like maybe like 8 times, maybe 10. Maybe 10. But he will always, take me back,
Yeah.
and at that point, throughout those years, of course, like I said, I was still, I didn't really see yet, but by year 18, I saw.
Yeah.
So I started counting the divorces myself. And even though the divorce was supposed to be in his hands, I kind of started to speak up more and let it be known, like, I know that in recent times, because like I said, it's probably like 10 times he probably did it.
Yeah.
But I would say, like, in recent times, I know that this is the second divorce that you've done. So at that point, for the second divorce, I was just like, okay, well, you want to take me back. And I agreed to that because I knew I was working on my exit plan and I wasn't ready
Yeah.
yet,
Yeah.
you know? So I said, okay, you can take me back, but this time I'm going to have my own room, and I
Mm-hmm.
made it sound as if, he used to snore really loud. So I made
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
sound as if, I need my own room because I noticed that I can go to sleep immediately. It was true. It was actually the truth.
Yeah.
I noticed that I can sleep immediately, so I want to continue with having my own room. And at that point, I just started to distance myself, just more and more because he had very narcissistic tendencies. I really
Mm-hmm.
do. I know people throw around narcissism a lot these days, but I honestly, truly believe that he is a narcissist.
Mm-hmm.
Just with his tendencies, when I look back at the patterns that I saw, in that marriage. So I kind of just started to distance myself and distance my children more and more, and it was much easier to do, considering that I had my own room.
How were the kids? How were they navigating that type of energy, as you said, that they also began to distance? But how did you guys navigate that, having the 6 children and the emotional trap, I guess, that emotional field that is just explosive. Explosive. How did you manage to navigate in that? Just talk. That is. I'm listening to your story. I'm going, damn. This woman is badass. How did she put this together? Being in a different culture and stuff like that. So, how did you guys manage? How did the kids and you manage in that situation?
Do you mean towards the end of the situation, or
Yeah,
do you
towards
mean,
the end.
okay, towards the end, I had started making my children listen to meditations
Mm-hmm.
because I knew the importance of them changing their mindsets.
Yeah,
So I had some children who went along with it and some who were more resistant.
yeah.
One of my children, honestly, she passed away. Her name was Yosra. She was 10. She drowned
I'm
after my
sorry.
divorce. So this was like after
Yeah.
the 18 years when I was in, but still living in the same household but separated.
Mm-hmm.
She drowned. Her and my other daughter, who's 15, they were more receptive to meditations and
Mm-hmm.
changing their mindsets. So I had them listening to meditations at night and just kind of explaining to them about the subconscious mind, how that works, and how important it is for them to change their beliefs and to change their mindsets and to release, the trauma that we experience. So for them, I really saw them start to transform. But for my daughter, the one who passed away,
Mm-hmm.
for her, she started to transform, but then she kind of stopped listening to the meditation. And
Yeah.
I do feel like that environment, it was having an impact on her because she would go and visit with her father once a week.
Hmm.
And with her, the type of personality that she had, she was very impressionable. And
Yeah.
I feel like my ex-spouse was able to prey on her a lot,
Yeah.
and that really bothered me so much. So for her, I feel like she was beginning to transform, but because of her personality, it still was having some effect. But even with that, she was still feeling better. She was still feeling empowered. She was still beginning to change. It was
Yeah.
beginning to work with her. And definitely for my other daughter, the one who's 15, she just, with her personality, she's bad. That's all I'm
Yeah.
gonna say. She's bad. To be her age, she's bad. Like, she really did not let it affect her very much. She would look at things, and if my ex-spouse would do anything, she would question it. Like, she was the one who honestly he had issue with, because he saw that the things that he did, she would just not allow it to penetrate. She would question almost everything, and just when she thought about it, if it didn't make sense to her, she would just immediately reject it,
Wow.
just
Wow.
immediately. For my sons, the oldest one of them, I feel he's still a little struggling with it a bit, because I feel he's in a bit of denial.
Yeah.
He knows he has trauma, but I don't feel he truly accepts it. He doesn't
Yeah.
truly accept it. He's just like, kind of like, I'm fine, but
Yeah.
I know that he has the trauma because he's involved in social media, and some of his social media, he's talked about some of the things that he experienced
Mm.
with his father.
Oh, wow.
Which makes it clear
Yeah.
that he still feels something,
He's
even though he
dealing with
doesn't.
it. Yeah.
Right, doesn't
Yeah.
accept it. Another one of my sons is kind of the same thing. He kind of downplays it a bit, and again, doesn't really accept it, but doesn't really try to connect with his father much. So that he knows something's wrong there.
Yeah.
And for the other one, he's just kind of like, he sees it clearly and just doesn't even want to deal with it. So we kind of just, while living in the same household, we kind of built our own lives, honestly, Ken.
Yeah.
We built our
That's
own lives,
fascinating.
and kind of just detached ourselves from that person.
Yeah.
When we see them coming, we all just kind of make a beeline for our rooms,
Hmm.
and that's kind of how we dealt with it, and just doing things to just put us back in a good state if we had to have interaction, with that person.
Yeah. How after you guys were in this state, how did it progress to quote unquote the divorce? How did it come out, and how did you begin to put yourself together? As you said, your mindset. How did you? You mentioned how you were starting meditation. I know meditation is one of my tools that I use. It's very important. It helps me to navigate my time and control my being, my emotions, and all the other things. So, how did you progress to then, once you went through, to come up and say, "I'm going to put this in a book"? How did you get to that aspect after you came out of your divorce? How did you begin to think and say, "Hey, how did it? How, I need to go this route versus something else"?
Well, actually, one, I would say that my transformation had already began even before the divorce. 2 years before that, I had already begun to start transforming
Hmm.
myself, and it was apparent, to my spouse at the time, that things were changing with me. It
Hmm.
was apparent to them, and we were really starting to clash a lot, because where before I would make exceptions and allow for certain treatments, I started to stand up for myself more. I started to protect my children more, and just to truly just separate us, from that person. And so they can be very perceptive. So he kind of started to get a feel for what I was doing. And so what I believe is that it just kind of reached a point where he felt like she's not going to go back, because he kept trying to coax me back into that old person.
Yeah.
And after some time, it had been 2 years, maybe a little more, he started to see that she's not changing, she's not going back. And we started to just clash more and more and more. And during one of those periods where we clashed, he just said, "I divorce you." I don't even think that he realized at the time what he was doing. I think he kind of felt like, "Oh, I can just do like what I normally do and just take
Mm-hmm.
her back." But once he said it, I called him on it.
Yeah.
I said, "Oh, is this the third one? Is this the third one?" He
Mm-hmm.
said, "Well, I don't know. You tell me." I said, "You know, it's the third one." So at that point, he couldn't really take it back. The children were
Yeah.
there. Everyone, saw. So from there, with him pronouncing it, again, there was a lot there. I
Yeah.
went through so much because he was trying to put me out of the house.
Mm-hmm.
Here I am in this foreign country. I'm not able to work. You're trying to put me out. You're trying to keep my children with you. I said, no, no, I'm not leaving. I'm not leaving because from a religious perspective, once he called for the divorce, he can't just put you out. There's a 3 month
Yeah.
period where, you're able to stay, and you have to, those 3 months is just to make sure that you're not with the child, you're not with child.
Mm-hmm.
And then once that period is over, then that's it, you're actually divorced. But in this time frame, they're not allowed to take you back once it's the third time. So I just went through that period. I wouldn't leave the house. I wouldn't leave the house. So he ended up having to, I switched out all the locks in the area on the side of the house where I was. I switched the locks so he didn't have
Yeah.
access to me or the children. And we just started, just live life like that. I ended up having to file for the divorce because even though from an Islamic perspective he divorced me, he hadn't divorced me by the country.
Okay.
So I went and I did that legally. I went for the divorce legally because I knew that I had to do that in order to get the custody of, my
Yeah.
children. I didn't
Yeah.
want my children to stay, with this person. So I did everything legally myself. And throughout that time, is in reference to my mindset, I started to listen to meditations. I started to say positive affirmations. I started to read books about self development. And I had always read, those books. But before it was just, from time to time, and I would start a little bit and then, kind of stop. But at this
Mm-hmm.
point, I knew that me and my children being able to transcend that situation was dependent on me and my mindset.
Yeah.
And
Wow.
from a religious perspective, we believe that the way that you think of the creator is the way he is to you.
Yes.
That's what the creator says himself about himself, that the way we think of him is the way he is. So I knew that in order for me to transcend this situation, I have to change my mindset because the way that I was thinking is what got me in that.
Yeah. And
So
as you began,
I just, what were
to
you?
use it, was meditation and affirmation the main tools that you used to guide you out?
Yes, I would say that affirmations was a big tool that I used to guide
Mm-hmm.
me out, and definitely meditations to start just reprogramming my mind and
Yeah.
reprogramming my mindset, and honestly, not just that, but also spoken word
Yes.
in my energy. Like I just would not, I started to pay more attention to what type of energy I was taking in, even if it was just what I was watching, what I was
Mm-hmm.
listening to, the people I surrounded myself with. It really started to change. If that meant that I was by myself, then I was just by myself,
Yeah.
because I just wanted to just saturate myself with just positivity. I just could not afford to be around any negativity. I started to use
Talk.
my words to empower myself. If it wasn't good, and that's
Yeah.
another tenet from a religious standpoint, is that we believe that you say what's good,
Mm-hmm.
or you be quiet. Say good or be quiet.
Yeah. How did you? Because I listened to you just now, and I know some people may miss it. Talk to me a little about those boundaries that you began to set within yourself. You talked about some of what you allowed and listened, because you now become a guard. You become a guard to your thoughts. You become a guard to what you say, because those things are important, because they manifest things. Talk to me about some of those little things that you started, those as we said, that you're putting up, by which you are now governing yourself and how you listen, how you talk to people, and the type of people. Boundaries are important, I tell people. When you were recognizing that, how did you feel when you were making some of those boundaries?
When I was making the boundaries,
Yeah.
At first, it was a little different. It was a bit
Hmm.
different, but I knew that it was pivotal. I had to. I started to watch, like, pay more attention to what am I listening to. If there was a show, let's say I wanted to relax for a bit, if that show did not show something of who I wanted to be, or
Yeah.
if it did not portray something that I wanted to experience in my life, I wouldn't watch it.
Yeah.
I just
I
wouldn't
did the
watch it.
same. Some of the movies, my favorite type movies that I used to look at as a kid, I find that as I grew as an individual, I can't allow those things in my space anymore. And I had to go through some form of withdrawals because I love those movies so bad. So, but it was more important to me as to what I was putting in, and because I look at myself as a computer that is, with my imagination, I can do much damage, and or I can heal. So I can heal people, I can heal different relationships, or I can damage them. So as you are walking through this, how did you end up with putting it in a book, and how did that conversation came about?
Honestly, for what I wrote was an ebook.
Hmm.
And it came about because around me, because of my situation, a lot of women were coming to me that were in similar situations. Some of these people were friends or what have you. And I used to be a personal trainer, okay, let's
Hmm.
say that. So I had always had like a presence of kind of coaching women and helping women. So when they saw the situation that I was in and they saw, how I was transforming, they started to come to me and just discuss with me what they were going through. And I started to coach them and just help them and give them, some of the tools that I was using to transform. And
Wow.
so once I did that, I just started to feel like I want to use my experience to help other women and to help them to transcend through this because it's something that I see in the community a lot,
Yeah.
a lot. And I just felt that I just didn't like how people didn't really look at how powerful your mindset is and how
Yeah.
powerful your beliefs are and how powerful your thoughts are. And especially considering that this is a part of our religion. We have, things that talk about this, from a religious perspective.
Hmm.
So at that point I knew that okay, I have a message and I want to share it and I want to help. I knew that I could not experience everything that I had experienced and keep that to myself and not help others to transcend.
I think that is the purpose why you went through it. And I know sometimes I say some things that people, and they probably think I'm coarse, but I believe that some people can be trusted with the journey because of their servant heart. And when they go through the journey, their deepest desire is to serve and to reach back and assist. And I think because your heart was like that, you were picked or allowed to go through the journey because God saw the need of all the other women behind you. And He needed someone that He can trust, that He can depend upon, that will walk through that, learn, and put it in a format by which now you can serve. And so everyone that is listening to this conversation, women that are in this situation, this type of situation, you have an advocate on in this conversation that you can reach out to via her books, her course that she has, the 8-week course that she has to walk you through the adjustments that you will need to do, the shifting of your mind, the shifting of your belief system, a total shifting in all that you were taught in order for you to create the new person that you need to have in order to be in this planet. So you can shine as she knows the questions to ask you because she's been through so that she can save you some time, as
Yes,
they say,
absolutely.
because she has been there. She knows where those pitfalls are. She knows the questions to ask you in order to get the results that are necessary to get you from where you are to where you need to be. And so I suggest that you guys get in her space, purchase her books, get into her course so that you can change yourself and free your mind, and you will free everything else.
Yes.
So I want to thank you, Hasana, for coming to Threads of Enlightenment. This has been a powerful testimony and journey. And a lot of the women you're listening, you weren't in a different culture having to come up with a plan. And so this woman that I am talking to, she had to do it, so you know that she had some deepness in order to help you when you're in the same country. So I would get
Yes.
into her space, man. She will get you there and get you out of that situation quickly. Thank you so much for coming,
It's my
Asana, to
pleasure.
Thread.
And they can feel free to book a free confirmational call. I'm offering 10 confirmational calls. I've made time in my schedule. So
Yeah,
they can call for a transformational phone call to start their healing journey, to start
excellent.
their life.
I'm going to provide those things. Make sure that they're able to reach you, because this is a great need in our society today, especially with the onset of COVID that came in and
Yes.
exposed some of those crazy behaviors that these men had, and how they treated and disrespected their women and their family. And so I want you guys to reach out to her and get into her space, gain her wisdom. You need someone with a strong back and shoulders that will be able to walk with you. This woman is that person. Again, thank you so much for coming to
Thank you,
Threads.
Ken. It's been a pleasure. Thank
You're
you.
welcome.